Okay, so we are here. This is Socialism for All. Today's date is November 7th. It's a Saturday, I think, if I'm keeping up with days accurately.
Yeah, Saturday.
And we are talking with the Falcone General. He is a listener and commenter on Socialism for All. That's how I came to know him. He has his own channel, and we decided to do a collaboration. He is a socialist living in the United States. As he has described himself to me, and I thought it was
hmm
significant that he is about as young, I think, as somebody can be and be political. He's 14, so. Yet we talked last weekend a little bit on chat, and I was really struck. He is about the best informed, best read, let alone 14-year-old, let alone kind of any age person. Like I'm not sure I was as up on this stuff when I was significantly older than he was, and
Yeah.
thought it would be interesting to do a collaboration and listen to how he became a socialist interested in third parties in the Green Party, and just what kind of videos you're doing on your channel. So welcome to Socialism for All.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we have definitely some time to talk about a range of subjects, but how did you come to make a YouTube channel and become interested in the Green Party and, start watching my channel, Socialism for All?
So, it basically started when I used to watch like drama videos, and then I was like thinking, I can make a lot of money off of YouTube because I want to be like some CEO billionaire who makes their own uh country to become a monarch because I used to be a monarchist, but that's way in the past. And my YouTube channel used to be a drama channel. I still have my drama channel videos up if anybody wants to see. But also, like, I was like looking up this like weird thing on YouTube, and it showed Kyle Kalinske shitting on Pat Robertson. Sorry about that. Crapping on Pat Robertson because of him being like homophobic and talking about some culture war stuff. And then I saw some TYT videos and I started daily watching TYT. I still watch TYT to just get some news in, but I don't agree with their commentary the majority of the time. Like 20 or 10 or 30% of the time. But then I saw this debate that Cenk Uygur recommended me, but before it was recommended to me on my YouTube algorithm page. And so it said socialism versus capitalism, Richard Wolff versus this libertarian. And I was hesitant to watch it, but then Cenk Uygur recommended me to watch it, and so I watched it, and then I was like, Richard Wolff's ideas are great, and maybe communism and socialism is the best way to go. And then I started going more for social democrat to now full on communist in a span of a year. And my channel, I mostly talk about the economic war, where I report on stories like, for example, I reported on the Tulsi Gabbard and Project Veritas situation and Pelosi losing her crap over being asked a basic question, and some election news stuff and others about the economic war.
Okay. So basically, it was kind of the progressive to far left pipeline, such as it is with
Mhm.
like Richard Wolff as a major link in the middle. What was it that Richard Wolff said that you found compelling or persuasive?
How he was showing how capitalism has been an oppressive system by stating out how basically it was the cause of slavery, feudalism, and serfdom, and advocating for democracy in the workplace, where basically the workers get to decide what to produce, where to produce, how to produce, and what to do with the profits. That kind of appealed to me, and like I heard like Red Scare propaganda a little bit, But then I was like, huh, I'm starting to become skeptical of that. And then I started watching more of his videos, and it really showed how capitalism was not the cure. It's a horrible system, and still is, and nothing's redeemable about it.
Yeah, how would you say, I mean, from learning what you've learned at this point in your development and political education, how do you see capitalism impacting your life for better or worse at this point in time?
Uh, Mostly capitalism, how it affects my life so far is really how it's like changing my dad into like he was just some like he was like kind of just like some normie who was like trying to rise and who's like rising in the ranks of the job he has to now he's like a manager. But as well as like later on after like the Trump election during 2020, he started diving into QAnon conspiracy theories. That's how it kind of affected my life, where my dad started going full on capitalist and started diving into QAnon conspiracy theories and started acting more conservative and little pro Trump.
Yeah, that can happen. I mean, I think something that we've been seeing is, due to, I mean, of course, what we see in the US is um, affected by the global economy, capitalism as a whole. Of course, the US arguably is like the global headquarters of capitalism, but things happen on a global scale, which then puts pressure on the US economy. And this system seems to be coming under a great deal of strain. That's definitely something Richard Wolff talks about a lot.
Yeah.
And I think it's sad to see, people. Um, in our personal lives get sucked into that, as capitalism tries to desperately sort of protect itself by putting out QAnon and stuff like that to get people to try to, shore up this system that's just not doing very well. I mean, we had a major crash in 2008, and then we have whatever's going. I mean, really a kind of a weak recovery where only kind of millionaires
Uh,
got
him.
got the recovery. And then, and then people in our personal lives like pick up on propaganda like that. It's sad to see. Is that kind of like running its course with your dad, or is he still like pretty invested in the Q stuff?
I haven't I think like he's still kind of a little bit invested in it, as well as like I think it's 'cause like for example he used to be like some Che Guevara fan. I heard from one of my cousins telling me he used to like always wear a Che Guevara shirt, and then basically they said that he basically saw how like the world works, and basically that influenced him to uh just like believe in more in capitalism. And sometimes like his friends and them talk about the conspiracy theory stuff. Like for example, one of his like claims was, three of my military friends told me that there was going to be an attack in the South where basically people were going to come out of some U-Haul trucks and stuff like that, and then nothing happened. And basically believes that vaccines cause autism when that doesn't happen at all. There's like zero evidence of it. But yeah, like we still have our debates, and I still debunk him, and like I get him kind of onto my side a little bit because like he used to not be for decriminalization of all drugs, and now he's for decriminalization of all drugs. So like he's mostly kind of now a centrist a little bit. I'm still trying to like change his mind about stuff.
Yeah, so you had mentioned to me earlier, like a little bit about your family ethnicity. You live in the United States, but is part
Yeah.
of your family from South America, and how has that impacted their politics that you've seen?
Okay. my grandma is from El Salvador. She fled during the Civil War because of Arena, the two major parties right now, Arena and FML. FML is the Communist Party, Arena is the laissez-faire pro-capitalist party. And they got into a civil war, and she had to flee not to die, and her whole family fled as well. She met with my grandfather, who was also Cuban American, but I never met him because he walked out my dad. He literally like walked out his whole family. But yeah, as well as like some of my other family members from my stepmom's side are Puerto Ricans. Like my remember I told you about my aunt who was like talking about communism is all just dictatorship and stuff like that and Red Scare propaganda.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, and she also recommended me this book here that I put on my book recommendations video called The War Against All Puerto Ricans.
What's that
Yeah.
about?
Oh, it's
I mean, because,
basically about
not everybody in the audience may be that up on what's going on in Puerto Rico beyond.
yeah.
I mean, we've seen that they're a territory of the U.S. that wants representation, that wants to not be treated like a colony, which it basically still is
Yeah.
like. And then, of course, when Trump was down there in the photo op tossing paper towels to people, while really Puerto Rico was devastated by, was it Hurricane
Yeah.
Maria?
Yeah. It also says this that it talks about over 50 years of military occupation, colonial rule. The Nationalist Party staged an unsuccessful armed insurrection in the United States. This happened in the 1950s, I heard. But I haven't read the full book yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, switching to that, I saw you had some videos up on book recommendations.
Yeah.
What is a young socialist is reading today in 2020?
So in 2020 and 2019, I read a book from Stacey Abrams. Yeah, she's a corporate establishment Democrat now.
I guess
I
that, yeah.
used to like her. I used to like her. But the book was kind of amazing. It helped me channel my ambition a little bit. And this book was written during her semi-progressive years. And Bernie Sanders, Our Revolution. And I also got the Che Guevara book as well. And other books that have nothing, some books that have nothing to do with politics, like The Last Mohicans or something like that. It's some Native American tribe. And a biography book about Mary Curry, and another one about Eleanor Roosevelt, and Desk 88, written by Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown, where it talks about George McGovern's seat and a bunch of our senators who used to have that desk.
Yeah, about Stacey Abrams. I mean Bernie Sanders to some extent. It's
Yeah.
amazing what working with the Democratic Party will do as far as like pulling you right. And one of the things we were talking about last weekend
Oh,
was,
yeah.
maybe this need to detach from the Democrats. And, I know you've done a lot of videos about the Green Party and Howie Hawkins. What have you been telling people on your channel about that and in your life? Are your friends receptive to this in real life, or how do they take it?
Some of my family members, they are like vote blue no matter who, like from my mom's boyfriend side, like my bio mom's boyfriend side. Literally, my his cousin basically was saying that we need to vote for Joe Biden and we need to get Trump out quickly, even though she lives in a safe state, and I was talking about how that's going to make Joe Biden feel entitled to your vote. And I also talked with her mom to show, and I also talked with her mom showing a clip of Howie Hawkins debunking the notion that a vote for the Green Party is a vote for Trump. They kind of received it well as my mother has received it well, but she voted for Joe Biden, as I told you, as well as uh, uh my stepmom receives it well. Some of my other family members, they're like meh. on it because some of them are not really that political,
I mean, and to be
and some can't
fair,
even
that is how
vote.
much of the United States, feels
Yeah.
about it. So that's not unusual.
hmm So yeah, like as well as sometimes like we get accused of being
Oh,
grifters
can you
and
say that again?
people
You just,
who are just telling people not to vote when I made a debunking video about that. Oh, about the how they call us grifters. People call us grifters,
oh,
or
the Green
people
Party, how
think we're
people
telling.
call the Green Party grifters.
Yeah, they call us grifters. They call us they call us people who are telling people not to vote. When I made a debunking video about that, saying when we tell you not to vote for Joe Biden, we don't say do not vote at all. Like, if you're thinking of not voting, vote green then. Even if
Yeah.
you're in like sometimes if they're in a swing state and they would refuse to vote for Joe Biden, okay, I'll leave them to their decision. Like Howie Hawkins also did like very well in Michigan. He got like 100,000 votes. We got the majority of his votes from now.
Huh.
But like it's okay if they like choose to vote third party. We shouldn't be calling them grifters. You should like talk about how we need to get ranked choice voting. Use good faith arguments instead of just voter shaming people to get to your goal. Like it's so weird
Yeah, well,
as
I mean,
well.
as far as grifting or just being out for the money, I mean, the Democrats take, I don't know, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars per election cycle
Yeah.
advertising. All they're doing, I mean, they throw maybe half a crumb to the working class, and the rest of their effort goes into making sure that the defense industry, that the weapons manufacturers are getting paid, that,
Yeah.
financial
Wall
institutions are
Street's getting
getting,
paid.
so it's like, where is the grift really? It's kind of a
Yeah.
classic misdirection down to, now, I mean, even people on the left, socialists may say that, vote green, don't vote green, like it's somewhat meaningless either way. I mean, and I think that yes, it's not likely that the Greens are ever going to win an election. So I think
Yeah.
if they even count it at all. But I mean, at most you might win some local races, and it may show
Yeah.
up just as some kind of a percentage. But we also know that the elections themselves are rife with fraud. I mean, not to be too discouraging to you as a young person, but I mean, it's kind of been well established at this point. If you look at the work of something
Oh
like
yeah.
Greg
For
Palast, are you familiar with him?
oh yeah, I heard about him.
Yeah,
As well as like for example, like Debbie Wasserman Schultz
yeah,
during her 2016 primary, some internal polls were showing that she was gonna lose big time, so she started taking bags. Her members of the Florida Democratic Party started taking bags full of ballots and burning them, throwing them away, stuffing them in trucks that were pro Tim Canova, where she only won by 13 points.
yeah. Tim Canova. I mean, he certainly, from what I've seen of him, he raised like a pretty good alarm about Debbie Wasserman Schultz. He was, for anybody who doesn't know, he was like a pro Bernie Sanders guy who
Yeah,
then decided to try to primary Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who was, part of the Clinton campaign and head of the DNC, and was
yeah,
clearly trying to shut Bernie and us out of the 2015, 2016 primaries. Tim Canova, I've seen embrace some like pretty weird, borderline, right-wing
crazy.
alliances since then. So
Oh yeah, he's
it
been
is what it is.
accusing. I heard about it from Status Coup, where he started accusing Jen Perlman of being paid by George Soros and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And
that's some
when
right-wing stuff right there.
Yeah, he's been going on some weird downhill crazy stuff and talking about how in 2018 that he was actually going to win when he ran as an independent when he should have just ran as a Democrat really in a state like Florida. Like if you're in Florida and you're trying to run as a green or a independent or a third party, it's not going to work in a state like Florida because in Florida they're gonna be overwhelmingly Democrat or very hostile to left wing ideas because of them Cuban Americans. Am I right? I hate those
Yeah, I mean,
words.
there's
I
definitely
always
some
make fun of
right-wing
them.
politics going on down in Florida. I mean, there's
Y-
plenty of working class people, but there's also a
Yeah,
very vocal right wing in Florida.
yeah. I always make fun of these Cuban Americans. Like I always make
Yeah.
fun of Cuban Americans. Like
Yeah.
they, like I call them just like bitter. They're mad that they lost their states. Oh, they're basically third generation or second generation Cuban Americans that have never even visited Cuba at all. They were only there since they were like 6 or 5, which they won't even remember much really. But and also like some of them might not even speak Spanish. I remember Bad Empanada did like a funny skit of what a Cuban American would be. Yeah,
So
as
back
well
when
as
you, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
oh yeah. Oh no, go back to what you were
Okay,
saying.
so like back when you were watching TYT back in the day, a few years ago, what was it that you liked about them versus say like, what attracted you to that over being more centrist or conservative in the first place? Like what was it that drew you to them?
Oh, how they were basically just like talking about like these news stories and talking about like the debates and stuff like that and how like they were going off on Janine Pirro and stuff. It was so funny during like the first debate and how they were also like talking about like news stories as well and how they were like discussing certain topics. I liked how they were going like, we're not gonna side with the Democrats here. We're gonna be anti-establishment and fight the establishment and Republicans as well. That's kind of what drew me into their side of politics.
So your socialism today, as you see it, we haven't really touched on it yet,
Oh
but I
yeah,
mean, you have gone pretty far down the like, left wing YouTube pipeline and are pretty knowledgeable of it all. How do you
yeah.
see your politics right now and kind of like what you hope to see emerge, as far as socialist politics in the U.S.? I mean, of course, the U.S. is one of the most, maybe right-wing countries like the imperialist stronghold, but what are kind of your hopes or things that you hope to contribute to in your activism?
I hope to contribute into a red world, a world that is filled of communism, where every country is communist and capitalism ends like immediately.
So, as far as like, what do you do in terms of like your online world, your social media sort of thing? What does it look like? I mean, being out there today, because I can tell you that, I've been online heavily, since the 90s, and I haven't seen anything like LeftTube until the last few years. And we saw
Yeah.
kind of the rise of like TYTs maybe in around 2010, and then it was mostly kind of libertarians and like boomer junk before that. But what's it like for you? Like, do you see a lot of other people your age into this stuff? And if so, like, what are you guys doing and talking about as far as socialism goes?
I was able to get kids to like become like social democratic in West Virginia, but not as like far as socialism or communism yet because I still haven't been in contact with those people. But on social media, a lot of Trump supporters are starting to follow me now, and on Storyfire, and basically the reason why is because I go full on uh, uh, hating on the Democrats because I go on off on the Democrats on Storyfire, and as well as hating on Republicans and the establishment. I think that's the reason why. But I try to convert people to try to see my side of what I talk about on Storyfire. And as well as on YouTube, I basically talk about solutions that we can make, report on the stories, and kind of an objective way to see me as like a better media source for people to watch on my YouTube channel and try to get them more into a pipeline of communism, really.
Yeah, so for example, like what kinds of things do you say to them to try to like win them over?
Like, I try going to just like saying this, like, I basically talk about how I really do not like Democrats or Republicans at all. Like, I hate them. Yeah, I just like on my videos, I go off on them. Like I just go on a full rant. Like my election day was a complete mess.
Oh, I'm
Where
getting a
I
little
went,
bit of mic noise from you handling it.
oh,
There you go.
so I'm getting like I'm on my video. Like I went off about how literally they sucked like crap and how they lost a couple of seats in the House. They hurt our down ballot chances. Next, how literally they uh, refused to appeal to people and tried to basically appeal to them through supporting policies like Medicare for all, a Green New Deal, those types of policies, and like a $15 minimum wage. And I was also trying to like persuade communists to support like sex work, decriminalizing sex work because I also heard about how like tankies are not in favor of that and try to shake up their position as
I think
well.
it varies. I mean, I think that that's one of those topics that it's not entirely uniform. I mean, first of all, there's not a great deal of ideological unity even among the far left in the West because we don't really, if you go to a socialist country where there is like a socialist party, you're going to get a
Yeah,
lot more unity because the party is actually enforcing unity. But in
yeah,
the West, there's no like one party. You maybe have like half a dozen different loose groups, and they may have their line on it, but like nobody follows it. But yeah,
yeah,
that's definitely one topic that you get a lot of disagreement, and I think heated disagreement about for sure.
yeah. As well as like we also have like problems in our own community that we also have to like do. As well as like for example, like sometimes we have like people who like we don't know oh we're like people who are contrarians on our side. As well as like we also have like transphobes that are also on our side that would turn lots of people off and that I think like should not be associated with us at all.
What do you mean?
Like for example, like there was this like one time where I was watching that. Remember I talked about thoughts
You're breaking up a little bit.
and where he was all talking about Caleb Mulpin and how he was taking him out of context when he interviewed this woman named Jody, as well as
Okay, the
like
thought slime you said?
yeah,
Okay.
and talking about like how like her comments were kind of were like transphobic as about like ideology and uh transgender people, as
You're
well as
talking about
like
the famous Caleb Maupin interview with the
yeah,
Communist Party of Great Britain Marxist-Leninist.
yeah, because like Britain's basically turf island,
So
as
yeah,
well as
I
like
saw that interview and the one that Caleb did with her, and I'll say two things about that. The first thing is uh, that is not a good position that that party has, in my opinion, because their basis
yeah,
for their basis, first of all, there have always been people who are gender fluid or third gender or whatever. I mean, that goes back thousands and thousands of years. So, I mean,
uh-huh.
that is just a part of human experience that is not a recent invention at all. Indigenous people, like there's a long tradition of that. So that's the first thing is that she said that her party's opposition to that was because they are materialists and basically then that your biological sex should determine your gender, except that sex and gender are two different things. And
Yeah.
that's not, even if you're trying to take a materialist analysis, sex and gender are not linked. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's most common that people would have the gender that matches their sex, but they're two different things. So I think that, first of all, that's a terrible position that they gain absolutely nothing from having, and is hurtful to people. The second
Yeah.
thing I'll say is about Caleb Maupin. I greatly respect Caleb's massive knowledge base. I think sometimes he platforms people and then is not critical enough of them. I know he's had some far right wingers on his show that he
Yeah.
just kind of let talk and didn't really push back on. And I
Like how
actually
Dave
see
Rubin
him.
goes like nodding while like people go on their far right rants and stuff.
Yeah, and you just, especially for somebody with as much knowledge as Caleb has, unless you want to be seen as endorsing those positions implicitly, silence implies consent in that case. If you just let
Yeah.
somebody say something and you don't push back on it. I think he
Or
has just
like
like a
join
running
in.
problem with that.
Yeah. Like for example, like when it comes to Joe Rogan, when he talks to far right people, he joins into the conversation and basically kind of questions them on their positions and goes like
Yeah. I mean, and largely I think Rogan
like
tends to
goes
agree, but he
on
does push
to
back.
basically like why do you think that?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. He does at least,
Because
like, I think
like
a lot of times.
Rogan's kind of like
Go ahead.
I can't hear
Oh, you
you.
can't
Oh,
hear me now?
oh now I can hear you.
Okay.
Where basically like for example like where he kind of like works with Nos balls and stuff where that's not okay. Like people who work with like Nos balls should not even work with them or associate with them because they still associate with fascism as well
You're talking
and
about
trying
Caleb.
to combine communism and then like two types of communism which is like yeah where it's like authoritarianism and left, and also like libertarianism, all the way, almost all the way to libertarian left. Like for example, like Stalin would be in the biggest corner of authoritarian left, while somebody like Marx would be all the way uh to I think libertarian left as well.
I mean, I think that that's debatable for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
I have a lot of problems with that four quadrant political spectrum, which
Yeah,
incidentally was invented by a right-wing
libertarian.
libertarian activist. I mean, a guy named David Nolan, who was like, I think, vice chair of the Libertarian Party for a while, who came up with that spectrum pretty much solely for the purpose of promoting the Libertarian Party. And,
Yeah,
I think that there are some socialists who dislike Marxism Leninism because they say that, I mean, Noam Chomsky actually says this outright, that he doesn't consider Leninism part of Marxism. But if you do read Marx, I forget the name of it, but there was an audiobook I did where, like, flat out, I came away from reading it. It was from Marx. And, I put it up on Facebook with, like, Marx is a statist. I mean, he's very clear that you need a worker state. And,
yeah,
I mean, if people want to get into more nuanced debates about this that the Soviet Union did or that the Soviet Union did, I mean, the bottom line is Marx did advocate for a worker state. They had a worker state. They controlled a massive, massive territory that is just inherently hard to govern. And
yeah,
I'm not saying they didn't make any mistakes. I'm just saying it's super easy to
yeah,
sit back in the West and criticize that. when it's not your struggle directly?
Like, like for me, I'm a statist. I'm not full-on anarcho-communist. Like, I believe in like a communist state for every single country because I believe we should still have a state, not because for me, I'm not like into anarchism. I'm like more into kind of like having a state that's like full on communist. Like, for example, like when it comes to like countries when they do like something authoritarian, I would basically condemn it, and because like I wouldn't support like authoritarian actions from communist countries, and I would support the good stuff from communist countries and use that as an example of why it works, why communism works. Like for example, I use the example of how Castro put anti-discrimination laws, about how he basically helped almost eradicate literacy, produce a bunch of doctors, has a better has a universal healthcare system, how it's able to basically make a lung cancer vaccine, and able to have a economic embargo that even if it was like, let's say a country like Guatemala, like right now, where they're like super backwater now, or like
Hmm.
an African country where they would not even survive that type of embargo. Like, it would be crazy.
Yeah, I think, and this is for us in the United States or Canada, Australia, other, Western European countries that are already very industrialized and have been for a long time. A lot of times, people in these countries look at the prospect of socialism and they associate it with, less developed countries. And, I think that they're looking at it like primarily from the wrong lens. They'll look at it from more of a reactionary, like, well, what about productivity? If we pay everybody the same, won't that hurt productivity? When that's not the fundamental question of
Yeah.
socialism. It's how do you develop a country through like a major stage of industrialization without exploiting people, with setting up a
Yeah.
system that is actually sustainable and gives people a dignified life.
Yeah. As well as like for example, like they always like talk put these like weird hypotheticals, or like where like saying that, oh, if you tax the rich too much they'll leave the country. Okay, we did it with Eisenhower, where even though he's kind of a war criminal, but we also did it with Eisenhower where he had a 90% tax rate on the rich. The rich literally had a 90% tax rate, and they still stayed in the United States and they didn't leave.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like, it's
because
crazy.
at a certain point, I mean, the United States just is a good country to live in if you're, particularly if you're a wealthy person, even if you are being
Mhm.
taxed a lot. There are a number of books written about this topic, which is
Mhm.
generally called capital flight. In other words, like there are capital strikes, which is what Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged is all about. It's saying, what if capital went on strike? And the bottom line is that they can funnel a certain amount of things into offshore bank accounts and stuff, but they can't just take entire factories with them. And when
Yeah.
they do leave, we working people can just collectivize those factories that they left behind because they can't like
Yeah.
put them on their boat and take it with them. And then we can run them collectively. So, I mean,
Yeah.
yes, capital flight has hurt countries, but only to a certain extent.
Mhm. Like, for example, like people like they would like try to basically like throw in some like red scare arguments as well. Like, and also, it has to do with like how that Italian communists talked about cultural hegemony. We also have to break the cycle of that when it comes to the West and them believing so much in capitalism, where we need to break that cycle where they believe communism's horrible and stuff like that through like spreading it through young people and trying to get the younger generation to join. Because with the younger generation, they basically outlive the boomers, which the boomers we're not gonna be able to convince the majority of them. We're gonna convince a minority of them, but not a majority of them because they're gonna die out soon. They are going to sustain a system that they created. Because we can also appeal to young people with, for example, about how they would end up in student loan debt, how they would end up with debt over their eyes and lose their jobs and not even be able to make money and almost end up homeless because of a system that they had no involvement when it came to creating at all.
Yeah. Yeah, and you see more and more posts like that online, like, somebody posting, I'm 30 years old and there's already been two or three recessions in my lifetime. Like, tell me again,
Mm-hmm.
this is the greatest system. And it is, as I often say, I came about my politics by process of elimination, where it's
Mm-hmm.
like I realized I wasn't a Republican because they're the ones, clearly like starting all the wars. And I'm not clearly not a Democrat because they just work with the Republicans. And then,
Yeah.
kind of from there, it was just a matter of time, like for you, before I wound up a socialist. So I want to ask you more about your plans. First, I just wanted to mention two things. So you mentioned this was a while back, the Caleb Maupin and the Nazbol or National Bolshevik thing.
Oh yeah.
I've seen this about Caleb a lot, and it's not something I see him doing regularly. So I wish he would, and maybe he has. I wish he would address it more directly because that is something he takes like a lot of flack on. And I understand he put something kind of questionable in a book about like the Satan lobby or something like that that people were saying
Yeah.
anti-Semitic. So let me just say, just because you mentioned it, people might want to know, hey, S4A, why didn't you comment on that? Um, I have only seen these things in passing.
Yeah.
I wish Caleb. Well, first of all, I hope Caleb doesn't sincerely have those views. I hope that either somebody can throw me a link to like straighten it out one way or another, because if that is what
Yeah.
Caleb believes, I disagree strongly and would hope that he comes out of that. I did see somebody defending him along the lines of, well, he met with some Nazbol leader in Russia once. It doesn't mean that he agrees with him. I mean, I would still like to see more of a denunciation. And like I said, I think Caleb, he has strengths. One of his flaws is not pushing back on things enough. Another comment I just wanted to make is you mentioned anarchism, and I agree with
Yeah.
your position, which is that common among socialists that anarchists tend to want it all now. They want full revolution now. They want a stateless society now. But the more you kind of look at, for example, when they had the Russian Revolution, the capitalists then waged war, and there was a civil war for 6 years. How are you supposed to not have a state defending their society at that point? It just
Yeah.
kind of doesn't hold up. But that said, uh, I was on Fellow Traveler Stream last night, and the way I would put it is, while I dislike anarchism as an ideology, I tend to think a lot of anarchists are pretty good people. They're passionate, they care about the working class. They tend to get involved with organizations like mutual aid that helps people in their community. They tend to be active in labor unions and community unions. So I think a lot of anarchists are good people. I disagree with anarchism as like
Mm.
I don't think it's better than socialism. So that's
Yeah.
just say that. But so as we kind of move into the tail end of the interview here, so what are your plans right now for your channel, for whatever activism you're doing? What do you want to let people know about what's coming up for the Falcone General?
So I'm planning to run for office as a board of for the board of education as a Green Party candidate. I am planning to basically get people to lead the Democratic Party for 2 years to help build up the Green Party and register as a Green and join the Green Party as a member of the Green Party for just 2 years so I can help them win more seats and help the party grow in for the next elections. That's what I'm planning to do, as well as for my channel. I'm planning to still keep doing it and spreading my message to the public.
Okay. And I say that that's great. And people can, I mean, people from the far left socialists, may criticize the Green Party for like, oh, there's a branch of the Greens that is more liberal, and for a long time it was more liberal, even though they're embracing eco-socialism now. But I say
Hmm.
this to people, and I say this as somebody who has been involved in forming a union in my workplace in more
Hmm.
than once. Sometimes it was successful, sometimes it wasn't. I've been involved. I've been involved with the Green Party also. I've been involved with other orgs. You learn more than you can learn from YouTube videos and from books by getting actually involved in the struggle like that. So, whether
Yeah.
you stay with the Greens 5 years from now or whatever, your hands-on experience of actually being in that position is going to teach you a lot. And I recommend to everybody watching this, no matter what your age, get more involved. If you haven't been
Yeah.
involved at all, get involved. If you're, somewhat involved, get more involved because while burnout is a real thing after a while, uh, there's things for me that I have learned through being directly involved in struggle that I just never would have gotten from reading a book. And then conversely, there are things, it goes back and forth because like you read a book and you're like, oh, that's interesting. Then you go try to organize a community union or a labor union. And then, like, as you're doing it, things that you read stick out in your mind, like, oh, that's what they meant. It takes on a new meaning.
Yeah.
And all of it just helps to build your class consciousness. And then when it
Yeah.
comes time for you to write a book or whatever, you draw from those experiences in your book. And then, I think it's great that you're getting involved.
Yeah.
All
Oh
right.
wait, let me check
Well,
what time is it.
any other
Oh.
thoughts before we wrap up?
Alright. Basically, come on to my channel. Come and subscribe to my channel, and also let's try to build a greater movement for communism and socialism to thrive. And get more involved. We need you to get more involved and expand your activism. Hey, okay, I'm about to go. Oh, thank you
Okay.
guys.
All right. Well,
So,
thanks. This has been Socialism for All.
and the Falcone General. Bye,
Yes.
guys.
And we'll have links in the description.